Hi, I wanted to make this video because I've been thinking, and this time I've been thinking about fear of flying. So the reason I've been thinking about fear of flying is because I took a flight recently and it made me realise how far I've come to overcome my fear of flying. So I thought I'd share a bit more of that story in case it might help other people. So I used to have quite a significant fear of flying, and I couldn't see how I would ever get over it because no matter how many times I went on a plane, the fear never seemed to get any less. I tried to think my way out of it, but for every reassuring thought I would try to plant in my head, my brain would always seem to remind me that it's perfectly logical to be afraid of going up in the air when we all know about gravity and what it wants to do to things that go up in the air. So I didn't even know that I had this fear until I was an adult because I didn't go on any flights as a child. And I don't even think I was afraid to start with when I did start flying. I think I was more curious and amazed. So I'm not sure exactly when my fear started, but certainly by the time I started taking overseas trips in my 20s, it had already become a bit of a problem. I used to get really jittery in the days before a flight and I'd have trouble sleeping. I'd be really anxious at the airport and I'd often be shaken by the time I got on the plane. I usually turned to a bit of alcohol to try and calm my nerves, but that never really worked very well and it just made me feel horrible by the time I arrived where I was going. And then when I was at my destination, I'd be preoccupied with thoughts about the return journey, often having bad dreams about it. And it was really frustrating because I always knew I wanted to go on the trips, and deep down I knew I wasn't in danger, but my mind and body would react like I was in danger. And it was really hard to ignore that and willingly put myself in that situation. So you might wonder why I still did put myself through it, but I'm the sort of person who doesn't like to give in too easily. And if everyone else is managing to fly, then I want to manage it too. But it was definitely a struggle for me. And I mostly used to pretend that I was fine because I don't really like admitting my struggles, so that probably didn't help either. So the thing that triggered me to start taking a different approach was when I had my children. I wanted to take them on trips, but I didn't want them to be afraid like I was. And I was worried that they'd learn from me that flying was something to be scared of, and I didn't want to do that to them. So I decided that I needed to try harder to get over it. So I started by breaking down the specific things that I was most afraid of and trying to name them. And it was interesting to realise that it wasn't actually flying that caused me the most problems. The first two things were the lack of control over my own destiny when I get on a plane, and the claustrophobia of being hemmed in with lots of other people and hardly any space. So those things have actually got nothing to do with flying and can happen in other situations too. And actually they do. The same fear can happen to me in lifts or elevators. But the thing with those is that they're much easier to avoid and the experience is over a lot more quickly. So I hadn't really made that connection. So the only thing specific to flying that worried me was turbulence. So I had three different things to address and each of them needed a different approach. So the lack of control was the first one, and it was quite helpful to realise that I was struggling with that idea. And actually there is a different way of looking at it. And to be in control in that situation, I would have to be the one in charge of the airplane. So, is that what I want when I'm going on holiday? No, that wouldn't be a better option for me. So, I can reframe it that I'm glad to be able to just get on the plane and not have to worry about how to fly it or whether it's in good working order. And if you've seen my video about trust, you might already know that I can find this sort of thing a bit difficult. The idea of handing over control to someone else is something that troubles lots of different aspects of life for me, and it's not unique to flying. So it's useful for me to keep that perspective in mind. It's okay for me to try and ignore the instinct to be in control all the time. In fact, it's a good idea to ignore it sometimes, so I give myself permission to do that. And then the next problem is the claustrophobia. I travel in economy, so it's always a bit of a squash, and I really don't like that feeling. So again, it's not really related to flying, it just happens to be part of the experience. And there are ways to help with overcoming claustrophobia, and the main things that have helped me are controlling my breathing and distracting myself with other thoughts or activities. So I go prepared with good entertainment and noise cancelling headphones so that I can get quite immersed. And I remind myself to breathe out for longer than I breathe in, because that really helps to slow down any panic. And if I start to feel the claustrophobia get into me, I close my eyes and I imagine myself somewhere much more open, like sitting on a beach with a breeze blowing on me and loads of space around me. And if I do that and also make sure that I'm breathing slowly, it can really calm me down. And I also try and remind myself that we're all in the same situation and some people are totally calm about it. So there is an element of choice about how to react. And then the final thing is the turbulence. But it was interesting to realise that turbulence was actually the lowest of my fears about flying. So you could say that my fear wasn't about flying at all. I don't like turbulence, but I also believe the things I've read that it's a comfort issue rather than a safety issue. So I find it easier to accept that when it happens, I feel uncomfortable, but I don't have to worry about being any less safe than I was when it wasn't turbulent. I still don't like it, but my reaction tends to be a bit less if I keep that in mind. So, putting all of those things together, it really helped me to tackle my fear of flying, which maybe wasn't truly a fear of flying at all. And I genuinely don't feel the same way that I used to. I even kind of enjoy it sometimes, especially when I remind myself how amazing it is that we've been clever enough to make travelling the world so easy and accessible and normal. No other generations in history have had the options that we do now to explore the world. We do need to think about the impact that we might be having, but certainly the opportunities are amazing to have. I've also found it quite useful to have the perspective of how many flights are happening all the time. We've got access to so much information now, like live webcams from airports and flight tracking apps, that make it easier to see just how insignificant your own little flight is in the grand scheme of things. It might feel a big deal to you if you don't take many flights, but it isn't actually a big deal. And you're one of many, many people in the air at any given time. So I'm going on another flight next month, and honestly, I'm not worried about it at all. I'm looking forward to the trip, and I'm looking forward to being above the clouds and having that amazing view that you can only get from being in a plane. And I'm glad that I don't have to worry about how to fly the plane, and I'll be ready with my coping techniques if I need them, because I know that I can trust them to help me feel better if I do start to worry. So if anyone else can relate to this or has any other tips to share, I'd love to hear them if you'd like to leave a comment. So I hope you've taken something useful from this video, but I think that's all for this time. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!